the Blair Dunkley experience. So anyway, we're it's weird to say that when it's your own name, but it is an experience as you guys have been seeing this over the last few months here. Anyway, I have a special guest here tonight. It's not Trevor, so don't get it's actually Earl Flormata. Hey Earl, how are you?
Hey, doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. Anyway, Earl's one of my longtime friends, has been around and been taking a look at rewiring the mind stuff and mind models for the last 14 years. That's quite a while. So anyway, jumping right into this, I think I'm just going to start off. Are you okay jumping into this with me, Earl?
Yeah, good to go.
Good, great. So, just a quick question: can you sort of fill in everybody on the background? How did we meet, and just fill people in on that part?
All right. So it was actually really weird. My other mentor, Neil, who at the time was dragging me, kicking and screaming into marketing and sales. I didn't want to go. My background is actually computer science, and as a programmer and as like a server technician. So I wasn't really I guess, versed in the land of marketing and sales. And Neil Irwin drags me kicking and screaming into this world. And then he's like, he just makes me show up at this place. And Earl, come here right now at this time, this place. Sure. I show up and he goes, Blair, get him. I'm like, what? Get who? And then Blair just literally starts asking me questions. And that's really it. He just starts telling me my life story, going, how much did Neil tell you? And Neil's like, nothing. He's laughing his ass off, which is great. And then Blair tells me like, oh, this is what you're like. This is what you're not like. This is what keeps you up at night. How the hell do you know what keeps me up at night? And I'm like, geez, man. Like, and then Neil's like, okay, now you're going to Toronto. And I'm like, okay, why? Because this guy's running a course. And so now I'm going to Toronto. I'm buying tickets for this event. I have no idea who the hell this guy is. And it's not like one event. It's like 3 events with 2 weeks spaces in between. I'm like, why the hell are the 2 week spaces in between? This is crazy. And lo and behold, it was one of the biggest experiences of my life. It changed my life completely, right? So I was going into this as a fresh new sales guy, fresh new marketing guy. I was praying. I did like $150,000 in sales the year before, brand new. So I'm thinking, okay, if I do this sales thing, I'll probably double my sales. I'll be okay at $300,000 in sales. After Blair does his thing, he teaches me, I guess, the precursor to mind models, and I do $1.2 million in sales. I'm like, what the hell happened? That was not the target. Like, the target was 300 grand, right? So he quadrupled what I thought was even possible, and that was what I was hoping for. And then the year after, hey, Blair, can you teach the rest of my team how to do what you did to me? And I still don't know what you did to me. And then so what happens is that he comes and teaches the entire team. We do $28 million the year after. And I am in complete and utter shock going, holy cow, this has changed my life, right? So this is life-changing, life-altering. And I mean, I was not the best student in the class. I mean, I barely understood half the stuff he was talking about most of the time. And I was sitting there just trying to break half the stuff he was trying to explain to us. I was, just the hardcore computer guy. Like, no, this doesn't compute. I don't believe this. And then he just goes and proves it. I mean, I think he still has this. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, Blair, but he had this $100 challenge that if you could break his question concepts 14 years ago, I'm still thinking about how to break this crap. Right. I have deep discussions.
You know what? Funny thing that you bring that up, because I'm just digging out of my wallet here. I have.
You still have the same $100 bill?
More or less, unfortunately or fortunately. It's just a second here and just digging it out. And ta-da, it's actually upgraded because the other one started falling apart. But it's the new plastic ones.
So so that one's a little more hardier.
Yeah, they are.
Just don't bring that to Winnipeg where it'll like melt on your dashboard.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, no. So yeah, seriously. And John Sue, another student, and I have these crazy deep discussions over lunch talking about this mind model technology, and we have deep arguments of trying to break it. We still can't break it. So yeah, it's been 14 years. I'm still banging my head against this thing. You've kind of stumbled, I guess. On one of life's just basic truths is what's happening.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's been working for quite a while. So I mean, I'm glad that it's still working for you and whatnot. So that's sort of absolutely.
So yeah, that's how we met, kicking and screaming.
Yep, exactly. Anyway, and I just want to give a few shout outs to quite a few of our regulars here. Brent's here, Becky Bird's here, Alan's here, Dwayne's here, John, Tommy. Some of the names are new. Tommy, I don't know if you're new or not. Phil, Nicole, those three I'm definitely not knowing if you're new or not. Just let me know if you are in the comments. Love to hear what you've got to say. Anyway, thanks for the update there. That was, geez, that was 14 years ago. That was
14 years ago, but I still remember it like it was yesterday because you scared the crap out of me.
You know, I gotta get Tyler on the show too, because Tyler's got a very fascinating story where Tyler actually wanted to get to know me, and yeah, basically he threatened to stalk me and live in my basement. Yes. Rather creepy response, but
he's normal. He's married now. It's fine.
Yeah. Everything turned out okay. A lot of time with him, but yeah, just spending a lot of time with him over the years. So yeah, it was cool. Very, very cool. Anyway, so, and you know, Tom Pearson is on here too, and I've known him for quite a while as well. So I mean, there's a few people that I've known for quite a number of years. Tom's out of New York area. I don't know if it's New Jersey or New York, but it's in that greater area of New York as well. Anyway, so how have mind models changed your life?
Well, I mean, it's your fault I became an entrepreneur, right? It's your fault I quit my job. I mean, like, it took you weeks to convince me to leave work when I was making, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 times as much doing my own business, right?
Yeah.
I think the argument that finally tipped over was, Earl, how much do you have in savings? I go, well, 2 or 3 times what I make in a year. He's like, well, how long does it take you to make that? A month and a half. And well, why don't you quit your job? Like, I don't want to quit my job. Right. And now it's, tough working for other folks unless I'm in like a managerial role. Otherwise, I'm almost unhireable. Right. It's like, I can't work here unless I can move stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, he's CMO of a company right now. If you care to share, that's fine. If not, that's okay too.
Sure. Oh, it's publicly traded, so they announced it. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Blockchain Foundry. It's a publicly traded company on the Canadian Stock Exchange, and it's we built a coin that's one of the top altcoins. So yeah, it's fun. So I'm a hired gun. People hire me to sell stuff. So
exactly, and more than just sell stuff. It's like, to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you apply your way of thinking, which is sort of mind model-esque, like built on mind models, and you look at ways of ripping down, tearing apart normal marketing analysis in a very unique way, which brings you to the point of being able to transform marketing and markets. And you find very systematic ways of penetrating them and building that client or that opportunity up within that market. Is that generally accurate, or?
Yeah, that's generally accurate. And to be quite honest, I mean, like I said, I wasn't the brightest of students in that room when you were teaching us, right? So I only really latched on to 2 major, well, maybe 3 major teachings, right? And the first major teaching was the order in which people purchase things in their mind, right? So fear, dream, quantify, close. Right. That has been my mantra since I met you, right? Cool. Every single presentation I've ever built. So we talk about like conscious competence, unconscious competence, and all the presentations that I had that were successful, you said that, hey, Earl, you're following this model. I'm like, what model? I don't understand what you're talking about. And I just know when I say this stuff in this sequence, for whatever reason, it sells a whole lot more than if I don't say it in the sequence. And What you did was you named and labeled the sequence of stuff that I was doing and said, well, this is working because, so you're addressing things in a certain order that people process things. And that's when my sales shot through the roof. Right. I was doing
that, literally is one of the key elements there. I mean, you're talking about naming and labeling, which is a mind model called naming and labeling, like
Yeah.
Woo-hoo. It's amazing, but it's true. You name and label things. You work from unconscious, like, okay, guys on the call here, this is sort of rather handy for you.
Sorry, this stuff's just kind of just built in after 14 years, right?
No. This is
normal speak.
This is totally cool. Anyway, it is huge because you're refreshing my mind about the basics again. And I really don't like diving into the deep end too much because I can get in there really, really deep and go down the rabbit hole, as it were. But this is like, okay, let's bring it back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals that you're sharing are simple. And they are, let's take the natural way that people think and process information to make decisions, to make buying decisions, to problem solve, to do all kinds of things. And by the way, here's a little tip or trick that I haven't shared in all of the weeks that I've been doing this in over 2 months of doing these ones. I've got a program called IBC, Igniting the Buying Conversation. And
that was the course I took.
Pardon me?
That was the course, right?
Yeah, that was the course that you took.
That's my first exposure too.
Yeah, exactly. And so that exposure was back in focusing on how do people actually make a buying decision. And I was back in the days of Life Skills College, I was trying to market Life Skills College, and I was looking at all these other salespeople were coming around trying to sell me on their sales training. And I was looking at all of their stuff, and I took one of the courses, and I was unfortunately extremely disappointed with it. And I went, it was a way of managing and manipulating people to get into agreement with me. I don't like that approach. I'd rather have conversations with people that actually cause people to get in alignment and go towards a problem-solving model. And back in the day, Life Skills taught people problem-solving models. And I thought long and hard on that. And I realized that a buying decision is a person solving a problem in their mind.
Right, but what the key part was that person solving the problem in their mind. So one of the key pieces was making it their idea. And exactly. So now every marketing funnel I create actually follows that same psychological process. Every presentation I make follows the same psychological process. Fear, dream, quantify, close, in that order. Even if it's, I know you taught us this only for like non-tangible things, but I use it to sell tangible things too.
Actually, you know what? I've broken my model, and the tangible selling model I've more or less thrown out because
good, because I only use this one.
Not like, and that happened probably not 15 years ago, but 10, 12.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it had to have been after you taught it to
8
me.
to
So
10 years ago.
That was 14 years ago.
10 years ago. Because I don't think I had, when I taught you, Trevor, you just got fear, dream, quantify, close, right? You didn't.
Yeah, there was nothing about you taught it as tangible and
intangible. Yeah, because I kept on testing out that tangible sales model.
Yeah, the old school feature benefits, tell me the pen type of thing.
Yeah.
And I prefer fear, dream, quantify, close. So I've actually used that to sell everything. It's funny enough, I didn't agree with you back then. Where like, you use this for this and this for this. I'm like, no, I'm dumb. I like this one. I'm just going to use the one trick because I'm a pony. That's what's going to work. $70 million in sales later, the same damn trick works every single time, right? So it's that structure. So and then the other one was who, what, how.
The success
right?
formula.
So success formula.
That is the success formula. Yeah. Those two.
So those two put together basically was the undermining basis of a lot of the stuff I've built to date, right? So that's all thanks to that one course I was dragged to in Toronto 3 times.
Yeah, that was funny.
So for me, it was the question concepts that really blew me away. But that was definitely part of igniting the buying conversation. That was the basis of it.
Definitely. I mean, that was the first thing he taught us on day one with the $100 offer. But, that's the stuff that got me questioning everything. And I'm like, wait, what? Oh, my gosh. Like, how do you form questions in your head? How do you think about anything? How do you think about thinking? The last mentorship session was, how do you think about thinking about thinking? I'm like, oh, well, yeah, okay. So, so yeah, I mean, that got real deep. But the first couple sessions, I remember, like, my brain would literally hurt after talking with Blair, and I wouldn't stop hurting for like 2 or 3 days. So, and then Blair was
that effect on people. Unfortunately,
you told me that ganglia takes that long to grow in your brain. I'm like, ow, this hurts.
Yeah.
So,
well, it doesn't usually take that long unless you're really reworking it a whole lot, and you have to be rethinking it a lot, because generally it's a 20 to 90-minute headache, and and once that's going, then it usually passes. But if you do deep thinking about it and keep reiterating it in all areas of your life, a few days, it can last a few days.
Yeah, this is me, right? Like, my background's IT. My backup has to have a backup, right? So, so I'm sitting there thinking how to break it in half, and then 3 days later I couldn't break it, so my head still hurts. So, but then it sticks, right? So 14 years later, I still remember the stuff you taught me on day one. So
yeah. Well, that's part of the whole sticking power of this. I mean,
the headache was worth it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's made you a few million, so I mean,
I can't complain.
Yeah.
So a little head brain damage is fine.
Okay, no worries.
So Earl, how do you see mind models? What are the main ways you see mind models helping other people that have never been exposed to them before?
Well, a lot of the stuff that you're going to get from other courses is a lot of just the how to get out of your own way type of thing. It doesn't teach you what to do once you've gotten out of your own way, right? So a lot of the other courses, I won't name them for respect, but I mean, they a lot of them, they help you because a lot of people are just in their own way, period. But then once you've gotten out of your own way, what do you do next? Right? And the mind models help you guide beyond the get out of your own way. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still help you get out of your own way. And, for a while I was like depressed, right? And Blair helped me out of that situation too. Again, using mind models to help me get out of my own way. But it's the continuation of the lesson beyond that piece that makes it interesting, right? That's the deepness of that model. So how does it help people? Well, not only does it help you get out of your own way, but it helps you then figure out, what do you do next, right? And the emphasis is on you, right? Like that who, what, how, the success pattern, that who has to be you. And, I thought I knew the success pattern, but you still have to review it. During that time of depression, I forgot the who part.
Yeah, totally. That was not a fun time.
No, definitely not. But I mean, that reiterated, like, doesn't matter how long ago you learned this stuff, you still have to review it.
Yeah. And you have to have it in a way that is totally accessible as well. I mean, that's the other side of the coin. Because if it's not accessible, it doesn't. And what I mean by accessible is it has to be top of mind to some degree, or close to top of mind. You don't have to have it right there on the edge. But as you said, it's got to be accessible. You've got to be able to know this stuff, name and label it, and go, okay, this is the piece that I need for me.
But it's practice too, right?
Yeah, it is.
Learning it is one thing, then reviewing it is another, then exercising it is a completely different thing, right? So I think someone was asking in the chat there, are we selling anything? I don't think I'm not, I got nothing to sell. So.
No, I mean, we're just moving things forward and giving people opportunities. So there's nothing really Earl did not come on here to promote anything, to sell anything, to do whatever. He came on here to share, so that, I mean, that's what we're mostly here doing. Like, occasionally people want to know about rewiring your mind for wealth, or where can I get access to more of these mind models, and they want to do more quickly, because we generally cover one a week. Just on the rewiring.
You can learn them all here. You can learn them all here for free. It's just,
Yeah. You're just going to have to hang around here for a couple of years. That's all.
Well, there's a lot of mind models.
Unfortunately, there are. But, so anyway, I want to go back a little bit and ask you about mindset versus mind models as well. And what makes mind models more effective than mindset, in your opinion?
Oh, I don't have my notes in front of me, but there was that structure where you talked about learning it, reviewing it, doing it, and just the depthness of learning it, right? I mean, you can know something or you can know something, right?
Right.
And so I find that like the mindset stuff, I mean, it's okay for like the surface area things. I mean, it'll solve, you know, your general day-to-day issue, but it won't get you further, right? The mind models actually dig deep, and like, I mean, I know we talked about judgment versus evaluation for like the longest time. That was like the first thing you bloody well taught us at that course right after question concepts. And when I was doing the stuff for the German company, we went right back to judgment versus evaluation again, but we took it at a deeper stage. And then when I moved to doing my own SEO company, you then took it again deeper, right? So I find that the mind models have, you know, lessons within lessons within lessons, and even though you crack the surface of it, you get the kind of the basics of it. There's always another deeper lesson. I'm pretty sure, like, you know, we talk about this 2.5 years from now, we'll be back to judgment versus evaluation again, but at another whole level, right? So, but every time we dig deeper, we peel back the layers of the onion. There's always some other, you know, hidden thing in there, which was, funny enough, the exact same message you were saying to begin with, but you know, I wasn't at the level that I could understand that, hey, this is what this means.
And that tends to be a fairly major theme throughout all of the mind models. And one of the issues that I personally have with mindset is all about just creating a learning mindset. Is Carol Dweck's book called Mindset. And it's a good book, don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing the book, but for a place to begin, it's fine. It's a solid place to begin. But if you're going to actually leverage yourself and get the success in life that you actually want, like Earl was just saying here, guys, I mean, it doesn't peel the onion well, because you can't see yourself differently other than you're supposed to learn more. Well, what is it that you're supposed to learn more? How do you go deeper? And one of the cool things is question concepts and questioning 3 levels deeper. And in fact, I've got another one that's just questioning 2 levels deeper. Then I teach questioning 3 levels deeper, which, I mean, these are all unique mind models that approach the problem differently. And when people start seeing that, they start seeing the changes. And those are some of the pieces. Yeah, Earl, go ahead.
So somebody was asking the question, evaluation versus what? And it's evaluation versus judgment.
Right.
Sorry. I'm on the weird setting on Zoom where I can see the chat too. I'm like, hey, cool. So,
oh, that's perfect. So. No, that is totally perfect. So yeah, Dwayne, it is, you know, so many people wind up self-judging. And that's one of the places where you started, you know, when I was working with you, Earl. Like, you would be so self-critical in the early days.
Oh my gosh. I remember when you did that whole product service relationship thing, like everything had to be perfect because I was a perfectionist, right? Because that was my job as a coder and IT guy, right? Everything has to be perfect. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be. It needs to be effective. And when you start taking a look at not living your life into perfection, you start living it to effectiveness, and you can actually move effectiveness into excellence. But again, one of the things that we do with excellence is we go, I've got a model. It's a mind model I usually share at a more elevated level, but it's a simple one. Excellence is about doing things to a standard of being very good, not perfect, just very good. And if you can do that to 80% of the time and allow yourself to fail 20% of the time, you can still keep on seeing that difference between what is truly effective and what is ineffective. And that builds excellence because you keep on working effectively at a high level of doing things very good, high degree of effectiveness, but that builds into excellence. Because if you can do things at a very good level 80% of the time, that transforms everything.
But you need that fail point as well, right? If you're not pushing to that level, you're not pushing hard enough, right? You could be growing at a faster rate if you allow yourself to screw up every now and then, right? One of the other things I've taken from all these things is it actually came from all three of you. So at one point I had three people mentoring and beating me up. It was Blair, Dan, and Dale, and it was the consistency and runway, right? You need to give yourself room, and people don't realize, like, you need to give yourself real room to do stuff. Like, don't give yourself 2 weeks. Think about like 2 years, right? And that consistency of putting that together every time, over and over and over again. That's where you're going to get that massive change, that massive value. And you have to, like you said, give yourself that screw up room, right?
Well, it's so critical to have that room for failure, that room for, fail. First attempt in learning.
Exactly.
Like, you've got to learn, you've got to grow, you've got to take it beyond where you currently are. It's huge. It's so critical. Yeah. Trevor mentioned evaluation for judge versus judgment was covered in episode 6. And so, that's a big one. I spent a fair amount of time on, because it is so, an entire episode on that one, because it is so critical for that.
It's gonna make sense.
Yeah, it is.
Stop it. Put my
And in this area where you're accelerating and you're going for being effective, but still moving on the mistakes and saying, okay, if I strive for excellence, and excellence is being very good 80% of the time and failing 20% of the time, am I naming and labeling while I'm failing? Because it's my first attempt in learning. Because if I don't name and label what I did, one, I can't avoid it. And two,
you'll make the same mistake again.
Exactly. And that was one of the things that I noticed in the early days. You would try to rename and label things differently without, do you recall that at all?
I remember you gave me this weird, crazy backhanded compliment. They're like, Earl, you fail faster than anyone I ever know. I'm like, oh, thanks. But I would just test the crap out of everything, right? It would be like, no, that's not good enough. Let's figure out how every single way we can screw up. Let's figure out every landmine around this thing.
Exactly.
But that was my pursuit of perfection, right? That was where everything had to be at 10. I burnt out all the time. I'm like, hey, Blair, why?
Yeah. So stuck in that. Trevor, you tried to jump in there too. What was your point?
I forgot now. I think I was just going to ask Earl, how did you manage to relabel things? Do you mean like as a why, as a judgment?
No, not necessarily. Like, there's this really good quote I ran into the other day, and it was, I will try my very best to make better mistakes tomorrow. And it's that constant and never-ending, learning experience, right? Like, you never really know anything. You just have a better understanding of it. It's like Blair was saying, is it efficient or inefficient, right? Like, you just get more efficient, but that doesn't mean like you're done, right? I mean, there's always something more to be learned, right? So it's kind of like it was like, I'm a martial artist as well. Well, at least I used to be a martial artist. I wouldn't consider myself one as much now. I don't train nearly as much as I used to. But that whole thing where your accomplishment is getting your black belt, right? And then finding out that the black belt was just the bottom of the foothill of the first mountain, right? Like, yeah, I did it. Oh my God, look at that mountain! And it's just, okay, we just started learning, right? And so, just even the quick wins I got with Blair back in the day, again, that just brought me to the foothills of the mountains of business, right? Like when I started, I didn't even know what a business model was, right? So
that's so true. That's so true.
And now we're running like 6 of them, and it's fine. And we can keep them all compartmentalized, named and labeled and structured, and so they're all running in their own little happy, efficient manner. But yeah, back when I started, it was just like, I don't know, it just makes money.
Yeah.
Right?
And
so
now
we weren't naming and labeling.
Yeah. And the whole naming and labeling helps you create systems so that it doesn't stress you out and overtax your brain, because you've got systems in place.
I use it as a cheat function now. Like, I get my staff and my teams to name and label themselves, so they own the damn thing. So now it's their idea, right? So I can't remember, someone was typing, it's really hard to get someone to argue with their own idea. Well, yeah, it's great. So I train the staff on how to do stuff. I don't really tell them how to do stuff. I just shoot a video of this is me doing stuff. Yeah, so this is how to do it. This is how it works. Blah, great. You write the manual.
That's fantastic. Right? Saves you a lot of work. Plus, they actually learn more, I imagine.
Well, then when the new guy comes in, guess who's training them? Not me, right? So all of a sudden, it's that taking the ego out of the spot. Like, oh man, even before Blair, it was like, no, I have to do everything because no one can do it as well as I can. And then, that was the ego talking, right? Like, then, it took me a few beatings to figure out that if someone can do it 60, 70, 80% as good as you, great. That's 60, 70, 80% of time that you don't have to be there, right? If you're still stuck on the whole perfection thing and you really want to get it out the door 100%, fine. Someone got it 80% of the way there. All I have to do is kick it over the edge the last 20. Just simple math. If I'm 100 and that guy is 80%, it's now 180. It doesn't have to be 200. It's still more effective, right? And that's moving ahead as opposed to me do everything and then burn out again.
Very, very cool. Okay, so for the people that are new here, I just read something here from Nicole, and she's wanting to know what the heck mind models are. So, and I'm going to position, mind models are actually behavioral-based tools and skills, literally models, ways of thinking. It's basically the difference between what you think about, like other people can tell you what to think. The what to think or what belief you should have a learning mindset. Okay, that is primarily a belief, is having a learning mindset. It's a very good belief. Don't get me wrong. It's just fine. But mind models like, well, we'll ignore the more complicated ones like question concepts, but evaluation versus judgment. A mind model is simply being able to name and label information that gives you a level of clarity between two areas. When I built mind models, basically, I realized that when we begin learning, the learning phase in life, we begin with mimicry as a baby. We mimic. We try and copy what we see. But as we develop our cognitive awareness and we can actually start thinking things through, we start using compare and contrast. And so most of the mind models are like evaluation versus judgment. You can evaluate or you can judge. Most people basically beat themselves up with judgments because they have received a lot of negative judgments. They know how to manage them. They know how to handle the negative emotion that's there only because they've had so much practice at it, but they still tend to default into judgment. And they judge themselves in terms of good, bad, right, wrong, that kind of language consistently for a very, very long time. And that holds them stuck at that level of effectiveness because you can only get as far as that judgment enables you to get to. You can't go further. Evaluation, on the other hand, means that, by the way, judgment tends to be internal, and somebody is either expressing an opinion of you, which is their internal state that they're attempting to impose on you so that you adopt the same internal state, which means that you take their judgment, or you can do evaluations. Evaluations are always 100% externally verifiable. And when they're externally verifiable, somebody can present it to you, but you can hold it here in front of you and literally look at it and say, I agree with this or I don't agree with this. And it's much easier than taking on somebody else's judgment that is making you right, wrong, good, or bad. It's not about them making you. It's about you being able to transition to an evaluation and say, hey, I like being able to determine what is effective for me and what's ineffective for me. By the way, that's another mind model, effective versus ineffective. And that level of compare and contrast again kicks in, and you can start figuring out the differences between the two of them. So it's a lot of compare and contrast pieces that transform people's lives. And that's one of the things that I noticed with you, Earl, that you did so exceptionally well and so quickly. You literally went out there and would test these things and see, is it more effective to go after compare and contrast type stuff and evaluation versus judgment, or effective versus ineffective. And you would go after efficient versus inefficient for your businesses. That is a mind model, but effective versus ineffective is the early stage one, because a lot of people try to be more and more and more efficient, but they flip into judgment. They go, that's good, that's bad, that's right, that's wrong. So I try and get them into effective versus ineffective first.
Well, definitely. I mean, I grew up in an Asian family, right? So, it's got that stereotype where you must have an A, and it's a 91% isn't good enough. Where the hell is it a 9%, right? So, I mean, I came from that type of family, and so the whole efficient versus inefficient didn't exist. It was did you get 100% or not? If you didn't get 100%, why the hell not, right? So then I started starting to give a little, right? I mean, that came from that whole perfection thing. When I started to give a little, all of a sudden, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, 51% is good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Efficiency model, right? Like, hey, did it work? Good. make it move forward. But then you could move a business based on a 51% efficiency model. Because if the rest of it's again, you want to use compare and contrast. If everyone else is running at 30% and you're running at 51%, you're kicking everyone else's butt, right?
Totally.
So sometimes it's like, when is enough enough? You don't have to always push to 100%. You had to beat me up over that one for a while, right? Because it's like, what do you mean 100%? No, like you need 100%, don't you? And then all of a sudden it's like, no, you don't. Right?
Well, you don't really win in business by making things perfect.
You lose actually in business by making things perfect. By the time you release, you're dead, and your competitors have beaten you, even with an inferior product, because they got the market first, right? Everybody knows them, right? If you sometimes
it's like the Sony Walkman thing. I don't know if you remember the story or not, but
yeah.
Do you want to share that one?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, the Sony Walkman was on. It was doing his thing. Mr. Sony of Sony, he had one breakthrough, and that was how to put a bass sound into an earbud and make earphones that would go in your ear, and they're called them earbuds. But that was his huge breakthrough, was getting bass into an earbud. Then it was putting it out immediately, and it turned out being cassette tape decks that he put it out to first, and inside of 13 years that Walkmans were around and dominating the market, there were 57 new versions of it, and that means there were more of those. There was one every 2 months or less. In some cases, the shortest time frame to a new revision of a Sony Walkman was literally 3 weeks. And it was all about incremental improvement. It was always about finding the thing that is more effective. And that was huge for me, that realization.
You take it a step further, the innovator's dilemma. They talk about hard drives, and basically everything in that industry had to double every cycle. So basically do everything you've ever done before, but double that. And then every cycle, do it again and do it again and do it again. And after 7, 8, 9, 10 years of this, remember hard drives used to be like 10 meg, right?
Yeah.
What the hell are you going to do with 10 meg now?
I don't know. I mean,
nothing.
PDF on it.
Right. So the doubling effect just over and over again. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, to keep up that pace all the time.
And how would you say that relates to mind models?
It's in the innovator's dilemma. I mean, it talks about having to structure things at a certain rate and do things at a certain pace at a regular interval over and over again. Learning could also be at that rate if you allow it to be, right? But then talking about whole judgment versus evaluation, you've got to give yourself that room. One of the bigger breakthroughs that Blair had me do, and this was like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, was I was almost of the mindset that you needed to always go evaluation, because he was beating that into me, evaluation versus judgment, do evaluation. But then, one time I didn't have enough data to do a proper evaluation. I physically couldn't do an evaluation. And at that point, Blair's like, Earl, like, you can't live your entire life in evaluation. Sometimes you need judgment because you can't function without it. That's how you fill in the gaps and the holes. Sometimes judgment is okay. Or you don't have the data, you have to make a judgment call. That's exactly the judgment call, right? Like you have to make a decision at this point. You may not always have all the data, so it was an imperfect solution to an imperfect situation, but it was effective, so it worked.
Yeah.
Right. So again, 51%. Sometimes 51% is enough, right? And that took a lot of getting out of me, right? Because again, I was of that model where 100% or nothing. Right, my dad was studying to be a doctor. Like, if you bring them 98% back to life, well, they're still dead. So, right, so yeah, I mean, that was a little rough in those days. But I mean, now for business, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be basically like Blair said, effective.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if it's effective,
trumps everything else. It really does. But, and again, I think you make a really good point there with judgment versus evaluation. There are points where judgment is required, and that's especially when you're starting out. But yeah, seriously.
Or when you're in an absolute stuck state because you don't have enough data to complete the evaluation model. If you don't have enough data, you fill in the gaps.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, and that's another thing that I deal with is assumptions, because assumptions are another mind model that I teach people around, because we actually have to make assumptions in our life, and we make a ton of them, but we have to recognize that we are. And most people think that assumptions aren't actually assumptions, they're facts. And when we hold on to that information that could be flawed because it's just an assumption as though it's a fact, well, first of all, it's turned into a judgment, and secondly, we hold that judgment as though it's an evaluation, and it's not, and it takes us down a completely ineffective path.
Yeah, and I've even seen people go the opposite way too, where they think all assumptions are bad, and you can't operate without running on assumptions. We wouldn't even be able to get out of bed in the morning.
You couldn't even cross the street.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, you've got to be able to make
what assumptions you need to question and evaluate.
That's right. Yeah, these are all of the, like, you're bringing me through a whole swack of mind models that we've covered over the years, that I haven't even gotten close to talking about here on the Blair Dunkley experience yet. I mean, I've only had 9, this is 10th week here really doing this. So, I mean, it's there are so many that we need to get in there, but they're so simple. That's the other thing. Is like
you have to review them. You can't just do them once. I mean, there's going to be multiple points of angles of blah blah blah, data points and situational issues that come up that make a difference, right? So it's not like it's a sitting duck. It's a moving target sometimes, right? So that's just life.
Life is a moving target, and yeah. So, I mean, you've got to, and one of the things that I love about mind models is the fact that they are so frickin' adaptable. I mean, they go in every direction that you could hope. Like, they're all about life, actually, and how we behave. So, anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
so what you got next?
I was just thinking, I was recalling some of the lower points of your life where, just bringing you back into not only evaluating it and getting you out of the judgment, but getting you into figuring out what you're doing that is effective. And especially when it's at that low point, and transitioning from going just with confidence into self-confidence again.
Oh man, that was a rough fight.
Yeah.
I can relate with that too. Anytime in my low points, it's really easy to feel like nothing I'm doing at all is effective.
Right.
And getting into that sort of flow. of really noticing that stuff and evaluating and knowing what I am doing effective. That was a big part of pulling me out of low points as well.
But the cadence, the amount of times you had to do it, to me was surprising as hell. Like, so if you recall, Blair, when I was sitting in the chair at the German office,
Right.
You told me that I had to reevaluate every single time I passed a lamppost when I was driving.
Yep.
I was like, what? That often? And yeah, that's crazy, right? But that's what it took, right? The lower you are, the more you have to repeat. I mean, at that point in time, I mean, I was almost suicidal. It was not good. A really, really tough point in my life. My dad had just passed away. Everything was just crazy. And then you're like, no, Earl, evaluate. How often? Like, no, like keep evaluating, right? And then
absolutely.
And so when I get into a stuck state, I just count the lampposts now, right? And I just never realized how fast you had to repeat.
Well, it's about updating. That one was, I needed to get you into updating faster to notice that you're not where you think you are. Because your brain, you were telling me absolutely emphatically how down, how low, how terrible your life was in that moment. And I needed for you to discover inside yourself that statement was not fact. It was an interpretation of how you felt, but was not fact.
Right. So just for the people who don't get what the hell Blair and I are talking about, because obviously we've been talking about this for years. My father had just passed away. I had just asked Blair to be my mentor again after like years of being in the dump. And it was just happenstance, good timing, right? Like I had you when I needed you, right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's like good things were happening in life, but I was judging them going, oh, this sucks, that sucks, everything sucks. And, once you evaluate, hey, look, this is more money than you've made in the last 3, 4, 5 years. This is good. You're on the upswing. You're doing stuff on your own again. But then, the emotional trauma and stress of, a parent passing away, right? I mean, that rips you down and then brings you back into the judgment state again when you're doing evaluation versus judgment. Are you doing okay? Well, I don't feel like I'm doing okay. Well, let's take a step back, evaluate it, take a look at your situation, and how are you doing, compared to, okay, let's go back to compare and contrast 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Oh, wow, this is actually really, really damn good compared to where that was. And so, the situation, I mean, it sucks having a parent die, but like, at the same time, like, being able to do better for my family, hey, getting back on track again. Oh, I can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel again. Oh, look, $1 million isn't that much money anymore. Right. So I'm struggling to make, 50 G's, 100 G's. And now it's like, okay, well, that's like breathing now. Right. Yeah. So it became, part of me recognizing myself again. Right. So, and now I'm, back on track to making $1 million. I mean, this is, where I was before, and it doesn't feel anywhere near as hard now that I've got these skill sets, right? So the skill sets are something that you can rely on, that you can come back and you can lean on. And it doesn't matter. I mean, like you could lose everything. You could take away all my contacts, all my connections, all my money, all the resources I have right now, and you'd be a month and a half and I'll be rebuilt again, right? I mean, that's the power of
hold it right there. I want to dive into that in terms of, yes, you guys got to hear this from my perspective, please. Like, you don't have to, but I'd really it would. You know what? But please try and hear it. Mind models enable, Earl here to know that he can rebuild in a month and a half or so after losing it all. Like, yes, he had to lose a lot of it initially, and yes, he had to redo some stuff, but once he got back into practicing it, that's the whole thing. I mean, I know I've gone through similar kinds of events in my life with my dad going into coma and everything else, and just realizing that mind models could allow me to come out the other side and be okay. And how long would that take me? A couple of months. That's what I put in the time. I did the work, and I came out the other side. And my dad was still in a coma, but I was not where I was initially, crumpled on the floor, crying my eyes out in a shower, trying to compete for which is putting out more water. My eyes are the shower. Like, like it's just like, no.
I definitely been there. But
Yeah.
but now, I mean, like it's shocking how fast the mind models work if you repeat them, right? Like the counting the lamppost thing now is like this, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm back, right?
Exactly. And that's about recovery time. The problem that I get with mindset is the recovery time. It takes months, if not years, for people to recover, not seconds or even minutes. Like it's like, boom, you can do this with mind models so damn fast because you've locked in behavior differences. You shift how you're thinking in your brain, not what you're thinking about, but literally how you are thinking differently.
Yeah,
and that's like push button. Mind models turn into push button thinking, and they change how you see yourself and the world.
But it's lightning quick. That's the big thing. I mean, like I got into a brand new space. I don't know my ass from my elbow if they're the same thing. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And a snap later, oh, I'm in control of the conversation. I'm in control of the business. There's $1 billion deal going down. My share is $1 million. Oh, great. Right. And this literally happens now. It's just using the mind models to structure the way you think about thinking about thinking. I know that's weird, but that's what we did last time. So yeah, but like if you go that 3-level deep thing, I mean, I don't recommend that for beginners. You should probably learn the first stuff first. I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years with Blair, and that one hurt my head. I gotta say, but I'm still going process versus flow. Yeah, so it's just take it step by step, right? Learn one mind model at a time, and you never know what you're going to latch onto, right? I mean, John latches onto different things than I latch onto, and
yeah, John Sue is huge. I should have him on here too.
Yeah, he's a fascinating fellow. So I mean, we have crazy deep discussions about the universe, and he's always got some crazy thing that you taught him 1 million years ago. And I remember that, but I never really hooked onto that as deeply as you did. So yeah, and then I would show him something that I got hooked onto, and then again, it's a good old time. It's always a really interesting lunch with John. So
yeah. Is there anything that anybody wants to ask Earl specifically? I should have asked that, thrown that out there. Is there...
I got I think 13% left on my battery before it dies. So
okay, well,
that's probably good. A good 15 minutes. I don't know how much longer this thing is for. It's 8 minutes.
Well,
right?
I was going to just hold you on for about 7 more minutes because we normally start doing profiling at the top of the hour here. So
okay, cool. All good. That's all the phone I have left. So
okay, that's perfect. So anyway, if anybody has a question here for Earl, please feel free. So what do you think the most effective mind model, if you had to pick one, which one has been the biggie for you?
The one that changed my life was probably Fear, Dream, Quantify, Close.
Cool.
Fear, Dream, Quantify, Close. If I had to pick just one, either that one or the success pattern, the who, what, how stuff. But I mean, those are the ones that really
taught that one in the first episode coming back from that would have been June, the first episode in June.
So those are the ones that have changed my life. If I had to pare it down to 2 things, those are the 2 that are just my go-tos, right?
Yep.
And so I've been teaching that to my mentees, right? So obviously not at the level you do, because that this is your stuff and you invented it. But I mean, like whenever they're stuck, I just show them this stuff. Like another friend, like was was on defense about do I go through a divorce or not go through a divorce. I showed him judgment versus evaluation, and there's the light hit him in the face, and he made a decision, right? So that changed his life. That changed everyone's life. But I mean, it changed everyone's life kind of for the better, right? So like they were no longer in that stuck state, right? So that's the worst.
I want to build on stuck states for a second here, because one of the key things here is again, mindset versus mind models and stuck states. There are so many people that get into a stuck state and they expect themselves to be able to figure out a way to learn their way through with mindset, and it doesn't really help. But mind models are behaviors. So you get to test these different ways of thinking. And that's one of the huge things that you can figure out way faster, especially if you start doing like the lightning thing. You just triggered me back to, okay, Earl, you got to do every light post you drive by or ride by on the bus or whatever it is, whenever you pass that light post, you've got to evaluate again and again and again and notice the difference. And you've got to notice your emotional self too.
That was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah, it is. It's not easy.
Dude, light posts go by really fast. So it's like click again. I'm not done the frick again. You know?
Exactly. But you've got to, like, the two things here are evaluating what's going on in your head, but you got to, because that really helps you control all that internal self-talk where you flip yourself out around it. And the second thing it does when you focus on the emotion of it, it gets you to notice smaller emotional shifts, which gives you a direction for you to go in. And
but then there's momentum though, right? Like the small emotional shifts, there's a momentum in a certain direction.
Absolutely. But it's the momentum in a direction when you need to make a judgment. You can, like a lot of people blindly trust their gut, but they haven't developed that emotional awareness, that EQ, basically, to be able to make that determination. And that is one of those skill sets that I teach more in a more sophisticated mind models. But that one, when you get that very quick emotional centering piece coming on, you get to be okay with yourself, even though you're barely feeling it. You notice the difference between one feeling and the next feeling. And sometimes they leap in almost a split second to some completely different feeling. And that gets you back to being in charge of what you're feeling, as opposed to how you're feeling. So you can name and label what you're feeling, which brings you to the present rather than what caused you or why you felt a certain way. I don't care about why I feel. I care about what I'm feeling. So I get to choose, is this an effective or an ineffective feeling for me in the moment? And can I find a different feeling that I can choose? So there's a whole nother mind model, and actually a bunch of different mind models around that area, but it's very, very powerful.
The picture that gets stuck in my head is Jackie Chan, whacking the guy saying, your focus needs more focus, right? So
we got a question from Aggie. She said, so mind models do help you think constructively or to adopt an effective way of thinking, in a way critical thinking skill that help towards problem solving?
Short answer, absolutely yes. Earl, did you want to build on that at all, or if not, I will.
There's just a million things going through my head for that answer. I mean, like effective versus ineffective, right? Like it's just basically helping your brain find the pattern that shows you the path to the way out, or the way to the solution. If that sorry, my low battery thing popped up. If that makes any sense, because I mean, you can't, like they were saying, I mean, you can't mindset your way out of certain situations, right? I mean, I've done a lot of the other types of training. I've done like men's camps. I've done the Tony Robbins walk on fire, break a board. I mean, I used to be a martial artist for a living, right? I mean, you can walk on freaking fire and your mindset ain't going to fix nothing, right? So, I mean, it's the mindset will help you out of certain situations, but you can dig yourself too deep. And sometimes the mindset, it takes too long to shift out of that using that technology, right? Whereas a mind model, I mean, like I said, Blair had me literally self-evaluating where I was, what my whole situation was, driving by lampposts, right? And I couldn't use the other stuff that quickly, right? It would take me a little while. This is not just Tony's stuff or like the men's group stuff or any of that other stuff. It took longer for that stuff to instantiate, to take place and then to happen in my head than Blair stuff. Because I mean, if you're forced to do it every lamppost, like that's literally like a second and a half every single time. A second and a half passes, you're supposed to reevaluate. I couldn't use any of the other, I guess, learnings to dig me out of those holes, right? Especially when you're in a really tough situation where you're probably unbalanced and like you're suicidal, or you're not really thinking straight. That's what it took to get me out of those positions. But then that is also what it takes to get me to focus deep enough for larger business plays, right? We went from, I mean, Blair sees me every week. I went from not knowing how to spell the word Bitcoin to now we're doing like, $1 billion deals. And I'm like, what happened? Right. And again, it's that the fast thinking, the fast mind models that helps you get out of those, sticky situations where you're making an evaluation versus a judgment call. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's tough because the language that we utilize, over the last 14 years, starts to become kind of an inner language, and it starts to replace that inner voice. Like I can remember that time when we were stuck in Las Vegas because the hurricane hit the Philippines. We were riding Philippine Airlines, and you taught me this crazy technique to weaponize basically my ADD. Right? I don't know how else to say it. I know that sounds weird, but okay. So I used to get stuck in a stuck state from the ADD, and then Blair taught me this weird exercise, and I still use it to this day. That lets me literally focus the ADD, and instead of just wandering off into the bushes and going squirrel like every 6 seconds, taking that and just focus firing it on something, and then instead of having the ADD take me off course, the ADD actually helps me solve a problem faster. Right, using it to my advantage. So, people who complain that they have ADHD, ADD, no, you can actually focus it and turn it into a weapon, right? So now, actually, one of my very favorite testimonials on my LinkedIn profile was somebody saying like they appreciate the rapidity or the rapid fire ideas I come up with for weird solutions out of the box for certain situations, and that was thanks to Blair. I mean, that was you turning my ADD into a business machine gun, right? So instead of running around chasing squirrels, it's like, no, solve this problem. No, solve this problem. No, solve this problem. And then just hammer away at it, but using what people would consider like a learning disability or, something that slows you down, and actually turning it into like a motorcycle and speeding up. Right. So you can, again, just harnessing these things makes it that much better. Right. A lot of entrepreneurs suffer from quote unquote ADD. I don't. I enjoy it now. So I enjoy it very much. And they're like, how the hell do you come up with these ideas so fast? No, I weaponize my ADD. Watch this. Hey. Right. And they're like, how the hell did you come up with all these things so fast? Light posts. What? Yeah. Right. Hurricanes and Philippines and airlines. And yeah, I don't know how else to explain it, but that's what I remember from this is, oh my gosh, this is like 2005. 2006, something like that. Like, so yeah, but like, again, just using those mind models to rapid fire stuff. I mean, it's a gift now, right?
It totally is. Like, and that's the same thing that I did with my dyslexia, is turn my dyslexia around. Instead of having it be a massive limitation, have it be one of those things that actually facilitate my alternative way of looking at the world. And seeing that pattern, thank you. And seeing that pattern. And then the trick was learning to name and label these things so that I could use them over and over and over again.
The naming and labeling for me helped me then teach and train my team, my staff, my peers, my co-leaders, right? Like to be able to move at the same pace, right? I always remember this, the one crazy thing that you did for us in Toronto, where you had 18 people holding one plate. And we were all on, different sides of the plate, and you made us pull the plate at the same time. And then you said that we didn't have to have, you were making fun of the people who said, you have to have laser focus. And you don't need laser focus. And you just managed to get everybody, not even on the same damn side of the plate, because there was lots of us. You got us to kind of almost go the same direction. There was this one empty part of the plate. I'm like, well, there's no efficiency there, right? And you said, no, just everybody pull. And even though some people will pull it the wrong way, the plate started moving one direction as opposed to staying stuck. And yeah, that's been stuck in my head ever since, right? That was a really good visual piece, right? And I've been using that for managing teams, right? Cool. And this is not, just managing small things. Like I'm the CMO of a multi-billion-dollar company. Like I use this to, move $500,000 worth of staff, right? So it's just, hey, this is great. Where'd it come from? A plate. You won't understand, right?
Yeah. No, and that whole piece there is so simple because it uses laws of physics there, laws of thermo.
No, it was straight up F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. That's it. The really basics, like grade 9 level physics. And
true enough. And that whole thing is that if you cut a circle in half, get all the energy on one side and pull equally there, it will move perpendicular to all that energy being there. It'll just squirt that way, almost effortlessly. And that's what I get work on getting teams to do. That's just one of the more sophisticated things we do with teams.
But that was the 51% mark. That was the thing that told me I didn't have to have laser focus. I didn't have to have perfection. I didn't have to have 100%. Getting everybody, and it wasn't even the half circle. You had people still beyond that half circle, and it was still working. And I'm like, oh my god!
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that was that life-changing point where that's where I got the number 51%. Sometimes is good enough. I mean, don't use that for everything. I mean, you kind of need more than 51% most of the damn time. But sometimes when you're in a really stuck state, just getting that initial momentum, that initial inertia, is what it takes to get everybody else out of the damn hole.
Yeah, right? Just moving is the most important thing. And that's one of the things that I keep on focusing on is just take a step forward, like see what happens. And if you can take incremental steps forward that don't cost you an arm and a leg, and if you can reduce the cost of it to figure out the test, get the test done as inexpensively as you can, that still gives you valid data. And
but it gives you the lesson. The lesson is...
It does. And that is so valuable, because then you can multiply that lesson over and over and over again and really build opportunities like lamppost, 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 lamppost. It just goes like really fast. They fly by and life starts speeding up and changes happen. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I got to go because my phone is making funny.
Well, I was going to ask you, is there any final comments you want to make to the group that's watching here, or anybody that listens to it later on down the line?
No, that's pretty much it. Thank you, Blair. I mean, no, it's been a hell of a ride, and I'm enjoying the rest of the ride so far. And yeah, it was really cool, just working with you and still working with you now, right?
I mean, it's really cool working with you too. I very much enjoy your time, your friendship, and working together. So it's fun. So anyway, you take care, and I just want to thank you so much for coming out. Trevor, any final comments here?
No, thanks for coming out, Earl. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, and thanks for dealing with the crazy adventure. I know we were supposed to do this from my house, but no internet means I can't. So exactly. We ended up doing it from the van, which is
thank you so much for improvising, but
it worked.
It just was another lamppost.
There you go. Fair enough. All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Pleasure.
See you, Earl.
Bye.
See you. Bye for now.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, normally what happens at this point in time, we would ask for volunteers that were anybody interested in being profiled. Hey, but in the meantime, while people put up their hand, all they have to do is just raise their hand there beside them. And we generally do coaching or profiling at this point. So, and if you have questions about any of the information there, if we didn't make something clear for you, you're stuck, you're new, you want us to explain something here that came up on that call, because this is very different for me. I normally just teach mind models, but I thought, you know what, showing somebody who has taken mind models and really applied them in his life and has totally transformed his life with this, I mean, I thought would be rather useful. So I hope that you guys think that it is. Okay, I'll just try and.
So if you guys are wanting to get profiled, you do need to be in a Zoom meeting. So if you're watching on the Facebook Live or the YouTube Live, you got to get on the Zoom meeting to be able to come on and face-to-face with Blair. You can find that by going to rewiringthemind.com/weekly webinar if you're not already registered. And if you're in here, you should see controls on Zoom. There's just a little raise hand button, literally. That's what we're looking for. And then whether you'd like to be profiled or get some coaching from Blair, if you guys haven't been exposed to that before, basically what Blair will do when you come on, if you want to be profiled, he'll be listening to your language pattern. So how you think, the words you say, as well as how you're using them. And then he uses that information to make highly probable guesses about you and tell you all about yourself. So after that, he'll give you some coaching and coach you on whatever it is that you want to get coached on, and it's totally free. So just looking for some volunteers. If you guys want to put your hand up, we can get started with that.
Yeah, totally. So thank you so much there, John. It was extremely useful. That's your comment. Hey, I'm glad it, pardon me. Oh, dear. I'm glad it was. Excuse me. I'm glad it was inspiring. Tom, great. Glad you could be on as long as you could be. You got to run. I hear you loud and clear. Freaking awesome. Like, great comment. Thank you so much. That was very useful from Aggie. Totally great with that. That's awesome. So I'm glad that we definitely brought on Earl today, because it was very, I think, very useful to give people a way of being inspired, seeing what's possible, seeing some of the mind models in action, as it were, and hearing the difference between, like, when I first met Earl, he had all of this stuff that Earl would read a book a week and just like pour this information into him. And, that's a huge thing. For people, he got all this information, but it was about getting it to be functionally effective and making it work. So that's the other thing. Patrick just said, I'm interested, but I'm nervous to talk in front of others. I hear you loud and clear. I do offer from time to time. I'm not offering it this week, but if you jump back on and if you want a private one, let me know. I do private profiling sessions, but I am currently, those do cost $250 per private profiling session. And I'll set those up if there's, again, an opportunity or demand for that. But, you get a free one here if you wish. And it's very useful for everybody around. People learn a lot from each other and your life situation. So how to pay attention, how to look at life differently, how to see things and how they operate could be huge. So, anyway, if there's
we're having a lack of volunteers this week.
This is the first time this has actually occurred. Not quite.
Well, a lot of the people that we have on here have actually already been volunteers. I think
that's right. That's true.
A little bit to do with that. So maybe just to get started, if there's a few people kind of on the fence because they haven't seen it yet, we had Kent ask, could you expand on what you taught him for his ADD?
Well, one of the things, sure. So basically, it was, again, ADD means that people keep it, like he kept on saying, squirrel, like, bright, shiny object syndrome is frequent and constantly refocusing on the next thing, on the next thing, on the next thing. But if the next thing, if you can get your brain trained and focused in to go, and what else could I do? And what else could I do? And what else could I do? It gets you into resourceful states, because the next shiny thing is not something completely different, but it is to your mind, because you got to keep on asking yourself, what might I do completely different, which still solves this core problem? So he doesn't have to move. People with ADD don't necessarily have to switch problems. They usually do, only because they're habituated to do that. But their brain just wants to look and find other problems to solve. So that was Earl's case. So it was fine. Then refocus and be this rapid fire machine gun for solving the same problem in multiple ways and get yourself resourceful. And that was the nugget of it. That's like the core of that whole thing. And evaluate. What else might I do differently? What else might I do differently? What else might I do differently? And firing away. And once he got into that mode, it was like no stopping him. It was like incredible how rapidly he would come up with ideas. But then again, I also go, it's not that uncommon for people with ADHD or ADD to be able to do that once they refocus that whole ADHD or ADD onto that one target and go, okay, what else is different? What else is different? What else is different? The other side of the coin here is I suggested to him to record himself when he's coming up with all of these alternative ideas and then go back through and evaluate each one, which one seems to be the most effective, and just go after what's the most effective here. And sure enough, it worked extraordinarily well for him. And he also has another company called Evil Marketing Genius. And that's part of his evil marketing genius persona, is coming up and just rapid firing all of these things, then breaking them down, all of these potential solutions to a problem, to a marketing problem, and breaking them down, and then, you know, applying that to clients. And clients tend to love it and go, wow, I've never heard of ideas like this before. And yeah, that's his sort of evil marketing genius persona. So anyway, it was quite cool.
So would you sum that up by directing his ADD towards a mind model instead of just whatever happens to catch his attention, and then just re-executing the mind model? And there's always new things that come up with that, whether it's an evaluation. You kept saying, but differently. So it's just one question, but I imagine it was still focused on the specific problem that he was looking at.
Well, exactly. It was always the same problem, but how might I approach this same thing differently? And then how might I approach this differently, and this differently? And this is always the same thing. So that was the whole trick to it.
Versus trying to just sit there and stay focused. Like
like he just like, again, it's like that whole mindset thing of being, I've got to be deliberate. I have to stay focused. I have to concentrate on this, and I'm not concentrating on this. So, okay. So what next?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like then he drifts off and it doesn't go anywhere. And then he finds something that's completely different. It's not on point. It's not effective. He doesn't wind up impressing anybody. He just winds up confusing the hell out of people because it's always something new and different. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Anyway, that's gone away. And that went away with the mind models. And like you said, just getting evaluate very rapidly every lamppost, and doing those very rapid evaluations. And he also did the exercise that I brought up. I also had him first do, was describing his feelings, so that he could know that his brain was shifting his emotional state incrementally time after time after time after time. That was really critical for him and virtually all of my students, to be able to recognize just the speed that your brain can change.
It can help facilitate an upward spiral as well.
Absolutely. It totally does. I mean, people think, I was rereading an article I wrote quite some time ago on the speed of change. And, you know, in short, the speed of change is instantaneous. I mean, when you change, you have moved, okay, like a hot knife through butter. It's just like it goes whoosh and it's through. And it takes a fraction of a second, you know, and life has changed.
Or the time it takes to answer one question.
Exactly. And like when I got married, I mean, I often thought back to this moment. My life changed forever the second I said I do. Like, you know, how long does it take to say that? Like that was the moment that I got married, and boom, your life is different from that point forward. I mean, now 30 plus years later, it's still going in the same direction, but it had changed from being single to being married, to being effective to being ineffective. I mean, all of these things happen in an instant, and most people give themselves time for change to happen. The prep time for change can be a little interesting. But generally, if you're asking yourself effective questions, it doesn't take long for your brain to sort it through and then fire on the behavior of doing it. And when you do it, life changes. If you think about doing it, life doesn't change. So it's a huge difference there.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other key takeaways from the conversation with Earl that maybe in the context of how it's happening, people might not have picked up on?
Well, for me, from one of the points where he talked about being very low to now, he's consistently a happy man. And that is one of the things that I was going to comment to him around. Is it perfect? Does he have a perfect life? No. But is he allowing himself to stay in a better place? And the answer is yes, he is. I mean, it is so effective. So yeah, he allows those emotions to be present and just to feel positive with himself, and stop the judgment and keep on evaluating and figure out what he's doing that's effective instead of try to figure out what he's doing that's ineffective. And that's one of the things that he does with his team. He builds on the things that are effective, that are working, and do more of what's working and stop doing what's not working. So Dwayne just said, wow, let me say that backwards. Wow. Okay.
I know one of the things that I was inspired by just hearing Earl talk about it is how there's always a deeper level. And I took that as there's always a deeper level of evaluation. It never really ends. I've had periods where I drift away from using some of the mind models and don't go through it in my head. And it's kind of coming back home again when you come back to them and realize how quickly things can change when you start implementing them.
And then you get to a point, like that's exactly what happened with Earl as well. Like he drifted away from them for a little bit and then came back to him and just realized how entrenched they are now and how habitual they are for him. And that's huge. And it's not about using them perfectly all the time. That's not the motivation. What motivated me to design them was find things where life throws crap at you. Okay? This isn't about having a perfect life, but it's about recovering from the crap faster. And the recovery period is the big thing that, I should have asked him about his recovery period now, because that was one of the things that is so huge about mind models. It doesn't take weeks, months, years. It usually takes minutes, maybe an hour, maybe a day or so, but it's not much longer than that. And not even rarely a full day if you dive back in. The second you start using the mind models, you start
recovery time?
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah. Oh, I know, when I first met you, my recovery time sucked, to put it lightly. I could be in a funk for like weeks at a time, sometimes, and then I'd be on a high for a while, and then I would lose it, and then I'd be in a funk for weeks. So I was very inconsistent with that, and you really worked with me on shortening that time. So going from a funk that lasts several weeks to even a week, that's a big difference, and that makes a massive difference. And now, okay, if you have one funky week out of the month, then you had 3 effective weeks, and being able to even shorten that more, like you said, it literally can be an instant, by going into the mind models, evaluating, and getting into a different flow. So that's one of the most powerful things I've experienced with it, is that it doesn't have to last that long if I don't want it to, and if I'm willing to actually go through the process.
That's so true. It is all about picking up the pace, being able to figure out where you are in the moment, what's working, what's not working, stop doing what's not working and do more of what is working. And can it be that simple? Short answer is absolutely, it is that simple. That's how life operates. And you can transform yourself radically when you know what to do that does work. So you have to learn some of these mind models, and you will learn them. These are not random things, these mind models. They're made by observation of some very successful people over the years. They're made by seeing what actually works. When I was at life skills colleges and seeing our students transform themselves when they would learn how to cope, one of the things that I would ask them is, what is causing you to cope more effectively? And they would say, well, I'm not as stuck as I used to be. Well, what causes you to be less stuck? And they would say, well, you know what? Describing my feelings has helped a whole lot, but being able to then describe my situation to myself, name and label it so that I can do it again. Mm-hmm. And when I know what I did that worked and I know it, I don't think I know it, but I actually do know it, it changed people's lives because they got the sense that they know that they know. Not they think they know, but they know that they know. And when you know it inside that you know it, it's easy to bring it back when it's not working. It's easy. It's like, do you think you know how to ride a bike, or do you know that you know how to ride a bike? Same difference. When you know that you know how to ride a bike, you get on the bike and you start riding it. It's like me. Like about 3 weeks ago, my youngest daughter bought her, she's in her 20s and she hasn't had a bike for a long time. And I haven't ridden a bike probably in 15, maybe 20 years. And I jumped on the bike and started pedaling again. And the thought crossed my mind, what if I have forgotten how to ride a bike? Well, they say, you know, you never forget how to ride a bike. It's true. You don't. And sure enough, you get on it and you go and boom. It's
might be a little rusty, but you're not going to forget.
No. And yeah, you're not perfect at it, but you didn't forget the fundamentals. And they all rush back very, very, very quickly. Because
I really like that analogy. And you're comparing that to a mind model, right? Like,
yep.
I don't think I'm ever going to forget the mind model, the valuation versus judgment, even if I've drifted away from it for a long time. I can come back. There's only a few pieces that I really need to remember, and then I can get into the flow of it. Is that sort of what you're talking about? Is there all different tools, just like riding a bike, that you can come back to and they'll work for you?
Well, that naming, labeling, effective versus ineffective. I mean, I can rattle off like, you know, all of these different mind models, and they all behave the same way because that is the inherent nature of mind models. And that mind models are inherently behaviorally driven, like riding a bike. It's a behavior. You have to have the behavior of balance. You have to have pedaling. You have to that motion sense, directing yourself, seeing where you're going and keeping yourself out of trouble. All of that stuff are all behaviors that you've learned when you learn to ride a bicycle to start off with. Whereas mindset is all about your belief. And every time a belief comes along, or every time your belief runs into a behavior that knocks you for a loop, you have to rebuild the belief to get you back to where you are. But the problem is that behaviors cause you to believe. So if you had a nasty fall, metaphorically, on a belief of yours, in other words, your dad goes into a coma, or like Earl, his dad dies, you have all of these nasty things that happen to you in your life. Well, you start bringing back in the mind models, and all of a sudden, your life starts getting better again. It's like you, and when you're sharing that it doesn't take you as long to get back into the game as it used to. Like, pardon me for saying this, but I do recall you being in funks for weeks and weeks. Like, you didn't say months, but I'd say well over a month.
And I almost did, but yeah, I thought 3 weeks was a reasonable period of time to subject myself to publicly. But yeah, that's not a joke either.
No, it wasn't a joke for you. It was pretty damn devastating. And that's the whole thing, is when you can compress that shitty time in your life down to even a week, when it was taking up, weeks upon weeks, in excess of a month. And I know people who's had years of shitty life, and they can still come out of this and start transforming themselves with mind models. So
pulling themselves out of a depression, essentially.
And the most important piece about that is it's not just depression, and it's not just whatever. It's about figuring out how to be more effective in your life. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're wanting to go into business for yourself, and you have all kinds of self-doubt in yourself, and you're second guessing yourself like crazy, Well, which lots of people are who aren't entrepreneurs. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to own that one. But if you are an entrepreneur and you're doing that, well, geez, mind models get you out of that because you can evaluate yourself out of that. You can be what's working, what's not working, what might I do differently. You can start building your self-confidence back up because you're making clear determinations on what is working and it's externally verifiable. And you don't have to trust your own internal dialogue that's saying, well, that's stupid, that can never work. Well, let me try it out and see if it does. Blair said to use this whole, I'm like, I have lost count at how many students of mine have said, I heard you, Blair, in my head. You were nowhere around, but I heard this little Blair voice in the back of my head saying, you know what? You got to test this out to see if it's actually true or not. If it's not true, don't use it. If it's true, do more of it. Like if it's working for you, do more of it until it's not. And they heard that, my little repetition going on in people's heads. And sure enough, it worked for them. They changed their own internal voice to mine, which is sort of creepy in one way, but not, it's okay in another. And they would start going out there and take it to a different way. And they would be able to transform themselves and make it different.
Comparing and contrasting.
Absolutely.
What their voice used to be in their head to the new voice and model that you had given them.
Absolutely. And that's the whole trick, is we have to compare and contrast. So anyway, I think I'm running out of stuff to say about Earl's stuff other than, wow, it was great. I am so glad that people saw it. Mostly, like, I see no negative comments here on this, only that it was yeah, totally effective, serving us. Thank you very much. Extremely useful and inspiring, and very, very useful. And wow, spelled backwards is still wow. Thank you, Dwayne, for that insight and funniness. Love the joke. Love the humor. Okay, so I was just going to wrap it up for this week, if that's okay with you, Trev.
Yeah, that's fine with me. We didn't get anybody that wanted to subject themselves to some profiling, so we can
no brave souls here right now, but we have had lots in the past, so that's okay. Cool. Anyway, so I just want to thank everybody for coming out who's still on the call. Thank you so much for attending. I hope this was helpful. It seems like it was for you, where you actually got to figure out that mind models can change at least Earl's life, and hopefully has changed or can change your lives, and move forward. Anyway, from myself, and oh, there's one new message here.
Oh, Patrick, are you? What do you mean, Patrick? Are you wanting to get profiled now? If you are, you press the raise hand button, and then we promote you. I know you were asking before, and you said you were a little nervous, but there should be a little button at the bottom to raise hand, if that's what you meant. Or if you do put in the chat there that you would like to be, we can still do that if Blair's still open to it.
Sure, totally.
Okay.
Patrick said yes, he is open to it. So
okay, so Patrick, what I'll do is I'll promote you to panelist, and then you'll come in, and then we'll have to tell you how to turn your video on and all that stuff, and your audio on, and we'll go. It's
generally down in your left-hand corner.
You won't be able to see it yet, though. I gotta get him in here. Okay.
There we go. We're getting him. And thank you very much, Dwayne. You know, already changing mine. That's huge. So,
all right. So you're in now, Patrick. In the bottom left-hand corner, you should see the mute button and the video button. You usually have to press the mic icon to get your mute off, and the video button to turn your video on. Sometimes you got to press the little arrow next to it to select the right audio and video device.
And there's Patrick. How are you doing, Patrick? Welcome. Super. Glad you jumped on. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. That's all I need, is about anywhere from 10 seconds to, well, a minute at most, usually 30 seconds. And then I can start filling you in about yourself.
Okay. Well, I am 34 years old. Both my parents passed away before I turned 30. I really haven't really done much with myself. So, it's just I've been trying to figure out what's my next step, and I'm always depressed. I'm always I don't know how you say it. Like a black sheep, I guess.
Sure.
So,
So what would you like to be profiled on?
just try to figure out what's causing my depression. That's one of my main things is why am I always sad? Why am I always, I don't know, down, I guess, or I also have some type of anxiety.
Hmm. Not surprising. One of the things that I would do, I'm not going to try and diagnose you or anything. I'll leave
No,
that.
no, I understand.
But one of the things that I would strongly suggest, do you actually get out and do anything that is volunteering with other people?
I used to do that, yes.
And how did you feel when you used to do that?
I was actually pretty happy about it.
Right. And that, first of all, is starting to use some of the fundamentals of the mind models, but you've got to take action to change your internal self.
Okay.
If you don't do things, you're going to get more of the same, and it will amplify over time.
Okay.
Your language pattern was a whole bunch of whys at the end of that. I don't know if you noticed that, but whys lead to stuck states. And you're in a big stuck state right now.
Yeah, I understand that. That's another thing I was gonna say. I'm stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Why? Big long term. And this stuck state has been going on for well over a year, maybe even 2 years right now. And you're drifting away into being more and more and more isolated. And more of this internal self-talk is not helping you because it tends to be all why focused internally. So you tend to beat yourself up. You don't see yourself as effective. When people make negative comments, you go, yeah, you're right. I'm that kind of negative person. And the problem is when you hear positive comments, you probably reinterpret that as somebody's trying to con you or do something to you that's not going to be pleasant at the end of the day. So you become more and more and more suspicious of people being nice to you, which is a spin-off of a why state of mind, which is why everything is, because you have to find the negative in a why state because it's all past related and you can't move forward when you're in a why state. So that's really the essence of where you are right now. The way that you transform that is by moving forward to doing things. And one of the fastest ways that I've found really helps people is when you go out there and you volunteer to help other people. And you'll find very quickly that those people are generally even worse off than you are. So in one sense, you can help others that are worse than you, and you can generally relate to them and understand them, and they super appreciate that. And so I really go, get yourself out there, get yourself involved back into the community. See what you can do with, I don't know what kind of community groups you have around you. We have Salvation Army up here. I don't know if you have that down there, but that would be a good one. But, places to go to be of service so that you feel you are contributing something. Because when people don't feel like they're contributing, they generally feel badly about themselves.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I don't want to dive deeper into anything else because there's no point in that. That's the biggest thing here is to get you more resourceful. And the biggest thing that I can suggest is get yourself into action and do something to help somebody else, because that takes your mind off you and gets you focused on others. And that will help you. And you'll start noticing how effective you are. Because at the end of the day, well, I'll go into this part. you know what? When you weren't in this depressed funk, you tended to care about others more than you do now. You tended to go out there and be a nice guy to know. And you have this protective streak in wanting to help other people in you, in that language pattern of yours. And, you know, that's a good thing, you know, and it's just it's not going out there and getting utilized.
Okay.
You know, so, I mean, you got to go out there and do stuff to be able to leverage yourself to move it forward. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Makes sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
How effective was that for you? Scale of 1 to 10.
Quite a bit, actually. It's probably like a 9, 10.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because because see, I used to be in the Lions Club. I used to volunteer with them all the time.
Perfect. That's another great group. I was going to actually suggest that, but that came out second in my brain. So, go.
I did, I don't know, numerous hours with them, and you know, just reason why I got out of there is because of the cost. Is what really.
Well, that's part of the reason that I got into Salvation Army. It doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
I'll definitely look into them and see if I could help them, you know, volunteer with them and see what I could do.
Yeah. And you can also, you know, one of the things there is that if there is a group or a business that is helping other people, you can always volunteer with them to see if you can't help them. And sometimes they are looking for people down the road to hire and say, yeah, this guy volunteered, but they get to see that you care about people. And they then turn around and offer you a job. Like, maybe, I don't know, but at least it's worth a shot. And in the meantime, you're still doing something that helps you feel better about yourself.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. You take care.
You too. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
It's about taking incremental small steps in your life. And that's what mind models are all about. And again, a lot of judgment and not a lot of evaluation there with Patrick. And, you know, that was useful for him to jump on and just risk it. And he risked. And so kudos to you, Patrick, on risking. So well done. You got to just try it out, see if it works, and take an incremental small step moving forward. Okay. With that said, maybe what we'll do is we'll wrap up tonight's call and do this in, well, not record time, but
almost.
Time.
Just before we do that, though, since we did have a few new people this week, I just wanted to let you guys know that all of these are recorded. So we have all the previous episodes available. So this is, I think, our 10th one that we've done on Zoom. And I've created a YouTube playlist that has all the other 9 that you can go and watch in all their glory. It's like 14 hours or something. So if this was your first exposure to mind models, or if you've only been on this one or one other one, all the other ones are still going to be really useful for you, especially like the first one. Blair mostly talks about mind models versus mindset. And then after that, each week we cover a new mind model. So we've covered a whole bunch of the mind models that were mentioned today. We were talking with Earl in passing. Some of them we haven't covered yet. But that's all free. So that's a really good resource if this was your first exposure, to go check that out. In the Facebook group that we have, the Blair Dunkley Experience, I do have an announcement post there that has a link to the YouTube playlist. But if you can't find that for whatever reason, just go to YouTube and search for the Blair Dunkley Experience, and you'll find the channel, and all the videos are on there. So hope that's helpful for you guys. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention, Blair, or are we good to wrap this up?
I'm good here, other than, just refocusing on the mindset versus mind models is a great reminder, and describing it a little bit differently is going to be important for us to get that. The fact that, mind models are that whole thing where there is no, You don't have to have a ritual. You don't have to do what any, walk on fire or water or whatever. It's just about finding things that work for you. And you don't have to know them all. The core ones are all that you really need to transform your life. And the more that you are effective with that, the more effective your life becomes. And it just starts simplifying your life. Anyway, that's about it for me, Trev.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. I'm going to shut the meeting down, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yep. Bye for now, guys.